You have to have your own systems in place for you, right? Let's keep it like let's keep it all the way to the bare bones, because we're talking about emotions, right? So I better have some pretty good systems in place for me to make sure that I know how to regulate and deal with my emotions. Point blank, period. Because as soon as you start introducing new people into my personal space, whether that be a romantic partner, a child, family member, maybe if you're taking care of somebody, you live with somebody, it's inherently more complicated.
Yep.
Now, my ability to cope might be, I might have some options, I might have some skills, but maybe I need some other ones to learn how to more properly and appropriately deal with it. I may need to go get help. I may need to go into therapy. I may need to seek out guidance from my immediate support system, right, to deal with that. Again, system, because I know that I need that additional support.
I actually want to jump into systems. I think as we're talking about environmental change and kind of, organizing our environment, I think the word system comes to my mind because I think that's where many of us fall short. We start kind of just putting a Band-Aid on things like, all right, let me fix this over here real quick. And then it's already a mess like a couple of days later. And that can be really challenging. So systems, I think it's really important for us to know where we keep our things. So like, okay, so I'm going to keep my clothes here. I'm going to do like the dirty clothes here. I'm going to clean my floor this amount of times, and like really creating a system so that we can create like basically like change that's going to be sustainable, change that's going to last like longer than us continuously just like reacting to our environment. Rather than we can start responding and create systems for how we organize our food. What would you say? Would you say that systems have played a role in your journey or organization and getting to creating that environmental clarity? I think would be a good way to put it.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. I mean, to me, like it's absolutely possible, I would say, in a systematic way to be able to not only organize oneself, one's family, one's relationships. I'm a big believer, man, it starts from the top down, right? It always starts with us as the individual. You have to have your own systems in place for you, right? Let's keep it like, let's keep it all the way to the bare bones, because we're talking about emotions, right? So I better have some pretty good systems in place for me to make sure that I know how to regulate and deal with my emotions. Point blank, period. Because as soon as you start introducing new people into my personal space, whether that be a romantic partner, a child, family member, maybe if you're taking care of somebody, you live with somebody, it's inherently more complicated.
Yep.
Right? Because you're adding in another human being. We are all complicated. So as soon as you add another one of us, you just keep multiplying it, right? So the systems absolutely have to be in place to make sure that I'm in a position to make sure that I am well. So what could that mean? So first, I need to understand what I'm dealing with. How am I feeling? Perhaps where this is coming from, right? Let's say I know how to do that. So I've learned how to deal with that. I've learned how to identify it. Now, my ability to cope might be, I might have some options, I might have some skills, but maybe I need some other ones to learn how to more properly and appropriately deal with it. I may need to go get help. I may need to go into therapy. I may need to seek out guidance from my immediate support system, right, to deal with that. Again, system, because I know that I need that additional support. So I know that when I'm in certain situations, I might not be equipped to fully handle it might not be one thing that I'm tackling at that time. Maybe it's 4, 5, 6 things that I'm dealing with, and it feels like it's happening all at once. And my ability to regulate, it can do like 3. So I know I'm going to need more support. So I need to go to my system, right? All of that is important because, again, if I am not well, then it's very difficult for me to then tackle being a good parent, being a good partner, being great at my job or effective even at my job, or any other thing that you value. So the systems are very much something that we as an individual can put in place. We can start building that out well before we choose to incorporate anybody into our lives. This is not one of those like, I need to be in a relationship to learn how to, no. You can do it now. I can learn how to do this before I have a kid, before I choose to let my family come live with me, or whatever other scenario, we're talking about.
That's going to save you some pain and suffering, honestly. So you remember experience when you try to like do it as like you're reacting rather than responding. So like you can actually start working on creating those systems early on. So when situations do arise, because we know that life happens, you are more prepared and you have more tools to handle those situations in a more productive way, in a more calm way, even. So I think you hit it right. You hit the nail right on the head. I think that's such an amazing point that you're making. That we can, and honestly, I would even say we should really start with us and like really make sure that we have really strong systems that work for us. Because what might work for me or RJ or another person might not even work for you. But you're only going to find that out by like really diving in within yourself and like really asking yourself those really hard questions, having those hard conversations with yourself, doing that journaling, going to therapy, going to your support system. Like there's so many ways to like do that work, but it really is helpful to start with you and like really figure out the systems that work for you in that way. And
Absolutely.
And again, like, don't try to tackle everything all together. Like to go back to the environmental change. Like if you're living in a massive house and it's all in disarray, and you try to tackle it all at once, it can be really overwhelming. Or if you're jumping from one thing to the other, you're not going to get any of those things done. Choosing one thing. Okay, I'm going to clean this room. I'm going to organize this room. I'm going to organize this cabinet. I'm going to organize this thing. I'm going to start here to completion, like till you have a good system for it that you can maintain, that it becomes second nature. That all right, this goes here, this goes here. Eventually, it's second. You don't even think about it. Like you have something in your hand, you know where it goes. You just that's how you deal with it. That's how you create that system. Same thing with our emotions. Like when we have those systems in place, if you try to tackle all of those things, if you tackle all of your trauma, all of those emotions that aren't serving you all at once, you're most likely not going to get anywhere with any of them. So it's good to choose one thing at a time, even. And a lot of the time you realize that a lot of the things are stemming from one thing. So when you go tackle one thing, you could even tackle a couple more things as well. But start with one thing with a focus. Like, okay, my intention is to deal with this specific trauma that I dealt with. Like, let me actually dive into this specific thing right now. Figure out where it's stemming from, how I'm viewing it, how it's been affecting my life. However, like there's many other questions that you can ask yourself that can help you gain clarity on those things. And it's even, of course, more helpful to have someone there who creates that open, honest, not judgment-free space for you to dive into that as well, because you don't have to do this alone either.
Absolutely.
It's helpful to have someone there who's actually gonna walk you through this, and it sometimes even give you some guidance. It's really helpful. It can be overwhelming to do a lot of this inner work by yourself. I highly recommend you do not. So, like, you start.
No.
I highly recommend you do not.
It's a lot to deal with.
It's a lot to deal with.
To try to manage it on your own.
Yeah.
And I want to make 2 points off of what you're saying, because I think this is important too.
Perfect. Yeah.
When you're talking about tackling, like, let's say you have multiple issues, right? Like I'll give another therapy example. Let's say somebody's coming in to work with me and there's like 6 issues that they've identified right off the bat before we've actually met, right?
Right.
My system, my way of thinking along the same lines of what you were saying, is that I want to identify the thing that's creating the most dysfunction, the thing that's creating the most negative impact in that person's life, and I want to start there. Because if we achieve nothing else, we're going to be able to relieve a large amount of hurt or pain or trauma or whatever else that you were dealing with at that time. And that's going to help you be able to move a little lighter as maybe you tackle other things, or you feel a bit more energized to address other parts of your life that previously you didn't feel like you had the ability to do so on your own. Now you do. And I'm not saying that, like, you snap your fingers and it's done. My point is, if you need that assistance and you get that assistance, and we tackle the thing that's giving you the most hurt or the most, the largest barrier to overcome.
Right.
That to me would be a perfect place to start. So first is, if you can identify what that thing is, that's great, right? Because then you know where you need help. The second point I wanted to mention in response to kind of what Christina was talking about was, when I think about what's different between us as men and our female counterparts, right? And I always want to make this point. Why is it so different? Why do we approach problem solving differently? Why do we approach seeking out assistance differently? Because it's conditioning. It's always about conditioning. And conditioning means when you've been subjected to a certain way of thinking and a certain behavior and certain responses that have come to you over the course of your life, then you start to learn to see things in a particular way. Now, I make that point, and I'm trying to emphasize that point because with women, what I've noticed is they do a really good job of seeking out that support when they know they're getting overwhelmed. I'm not saying all women do. I'm saying majority of them do a great job of that because they are conditioned that it is okay. We are not. We are not. And if you're black or brown, even more so. Take it another level down. We are not. And if anything, we're taught the opposite. So I want to emphasize that point when you're talking about systems. That is a great way to start. We have to identify the support system. I need a systematic way to have people to help me. If I wait until I'm in a situation and then go ask for help, number one, if I'm a man especially, I'm probably less likely to go ask because I'm already feeling some type of way about it. Maybe I feel emasculated, or I feel weak, or I don't want to be vulnerable, whatever other, word may come up for you. But then on top of that, I haven't practiced it. And if you've ever tried to do something that you've never practiced before, the first time or the first few times you do it, it's probably not going to go too well. So you want to have already started to build that thing out and practice what to do in that situation. So if and when you need that help, you need to utilize that system, you know where to start and you know what to do.